Hi everyone. I'm gonna get us started for today's session. Thank you for connecting. My name is Alicia Marjorie. I'm a senior economist in the Social Policy Department and one of the co-chairs of Solutions for Youth Employment Partnership at the World Bank. So for those of you who are not familiar with S4YE, Solutions for Youth Employment Partnership, it's a partnership that aims at enhancing young people's employment prospects by promoting innovative and proven youth employment solutions. It brings together a wide range of stakeholders, foundations, bilateral donors, private sectors, NGOs, research organizations. And we have today prominent CSOs from India. For our non-World Bank participants, let me also say a few words of the recent development at the World Bank. As you may know, the World Bank president, Ajay Banga, has made job creation and employment an explicit aim of World Bank projects. And as such, solutions for youth employment is extremely relevant. As part of this agenda, there's a strong emphasis on scalable and replicable solutions that work, which is exactly what we're focusing on for youth. And the work we're doing on youth employment also contributes to some of the key targets of the World Bank, such as the SP 500 target, which is to reach 500 million people with social protection and employment by 2030, an ambitious goal under which we hope to see many youth. It also contributes to the new skills strategy that the World Bank will be rolling out to prepare young people for jobs front and center. So to achieve this goal at the World Bank, we are rethinking our delivery approach, including how we can collaborate more actively with external partners. And this is why we're delighted to have this panel today. So this is where the peer learning series come in. We want to engage with stakeholders on youth employment ecosystem, on knowledge exchange and research, but also to make it an active dialogue where we can learn from them and they can also influence the way we see the challenges in our client countries. So the start of this peer learning series has been focused on integrating youth employment solutions into government system, and this is what we will continue to discuss today. Last session, we've been discussing the role of philanthropies, and now we're turning to the role of social innovators in scaling up. This is based on experience that CSOs also have a role to play in reaching impact at scale, but that requires collaboration with government. And this is why the people we invited today are really relevant to that conversation, and we're looking forward to hear more on that experience. Those NGOs have the experience in India of creating innovative career readiness and skilling models, yet partnering also with state governments and public education, as well as training institutions to facilitate large-scale adoption. So this is really where we want to hear from you and from your experience. So I want to introduce our amazing panel. We have 3 speakers and 1 discussant. Welcome Shyam Suryanarayan, Director of Udyam Learning Foundation. Nice to have you here.
Good
Saurabh
evening.
Rai, Vice President for System Adoption at MEDA. We also have Arunesh Singh, CEO of Generation India. And discussing with us, Kanupriya Misra, Education Specialist at the World Bank. And Kevin Hempel will moderate the session. Over to you, Kevin.
Thank you, Alicia. And yeah, we're all very excited to have these leading organizations in India to share some of the lessons. I think India, being such a big country, there's really no room to not think big, and I think that's why also other places can learn a lot. Before we dive in, very quick housekeeping. So the session is recorded, so just so everyone is aware, but that still means, we want candid conversation, open, free, but just making sure everyone knows. For all the participants, just stay muted throughout, but we will have Q&A, and then we'll call names, and then you can unmute yourself. But in the meantime, we really encourage you all to already tease some of your questions, comments, suggestions, reactions in the chat. We'll try to weave that in throughout. And then also it'll help us maybe call on you so you can ask your own question, right? So don't feel shy. Use the chat. Maybe we'll not get to everything, but even then, some of the resources you may share or similar question may ask, we can take that on board, afterwards. So with that being said, we'll jump right in. I want to, so everyone is on, I mean, these organizations are all well known, but just making sure everyone's on the same page. I'm going to ask our panelists just to introduce essentially your work. And maybe I'll frame it this way. What's the problem you're trying to solve, right? The very specific problem. And what's that intervention model you've come to adopt? Shyam, let me start with you. Then we'll take from there.
Sure. Thank you very much, Kevin. And thank you, Alicia, as well, and everyone here. My name is Shyam Suryanarayan. You can also see my colleague here whose camera is on, Harish. He takes care of operations. I've invited him. I think some of you would know him as well. So I thought that he could also join the conversation. Very quickly, we are from Udyam Learning Foundation, and I think everyone knows that every year 12 million youth enter the workforce. And the reality is there are vying for 1 million jobs. So there is a huge disconnect between the talent force entering the workforce versus the actual jobs available. And what ends up happening in the formal sector is that 8% end up in the formal sector, and pretty much 92% are a part of the informal economy, operating with necessity-based employment, self-employment, and if you want to call it a survival mindset. So if you look at our entire education system, it has, when we look at it, how are we add to this the dimension of India having the world's largest youth population, and that demographic being a very important factor, especially until probably 2041, when this demographic advantage is going to be with us. And then looking at our education system and how is it geared to solve or address this challenge that we're facing today. The reality of what we've learned from our education system is it's an excellent selection system or a filtration model, which does great for bringing the top 2%, 3%, 5%, and helping them succeed all over the world, I would say, and across the country as well. However, there is 95% who are pretty much fending for themselves. And as you see, they form a large part of the informal economy. Now, what we at Udyam do is shape entrepreneurial mindsets, and our entire work is built around integrating entrepreneurship education into government school curricula, because we do feel that this is foundational, and the largest group of impacted, potentially vulnerable student base are in this setup of government schools, and which is why we work with them and we integrate it at the adolescent age, between age 14 to 18. And we believe that these mindsets are very critical as we move forward with AI and the amount of change and uncertainty that the world is happening, that we are seeing everywhere. Fundamentally, we need to equip them with the right mindsets, which will enable agency unlocked at scale. Yeah.
Great. And just very quickly, so everyone can really imagine what you're doing. Just in a sentence, what does the intervention sort of look like? I understand, I think from 9th grade to 12th grade, very briefly, so we all can imagine what that looks like, the way you teach entrepreneurship education.
Sure. Yeah, it's basically, see, traditional teaching is a passive learning experience. Our entire learning experience is project-based and completely real world. So students do projects. So in 9th standard, students go through a curriculum where they have to solve a community project within their community. And there is a guided teacher, who facilitates these projects in terms of enabling them with the process of, identifying a local problem. And it could be anything from solving a problem like midday meal waste in their own school, and how do you repurpose it and use it, where we've seen students come and create fertilizer which gets tested and stuff. So different
Wonderful.
interesting projects, but community problem solving.
Great.
10th standard, they do a career exploration journey, because the idea is it's very important for students to understand their interests. So it's an interest-based journey to map their careers, their interests with the career options within their community and the region around them. So they go through a process of interviewing people from different walks of life based on their interests. So if I'm interested in sports, I talk to gym instructors, I talk to physiotherapists, I talk to maybe someone in sports medicine, and we saw this. And then it broadens the horizon where they interview them, understand how their life is, and
Okay.
actually start making their choices of what they can do in grade 11. So they
Okay.
choose their subjects based on this. It helps them in kind of aligning with their interest. Grade 11, they do a
Wonderful.
business project. In grade 11, they do a business project where governments actually give them a little bit of money and say, you know what, why don't you try out doing a business? And students form teams. And with that, what is called seed money, it's actually money to help them try an idea. It's around 1,000 rupees per student on average. So it's a very small amount, but the idea is try and fail, and it's fine, because the fear of failure or the fear of trying because of the money angle is something that money unlocks the agency and the trust. I think the belief and trust in youth is something that happens. So they go through a business project, come out with an idea, do a market survey, validate their idea, then they come out with a prototype, they pitch, and finally they actually try and sell. Yeah.
Right.
And
So
then
all of this
12th,
project-based from 9th to 12th, essentially, and always different kinds of challenges from community throughout.
yes.
Great. And we can dive into that later again, but I think that makes it tangible for everyone. So let me move on. Saurabh, what about you? Again, what is a specific problem? You're also in the career readiness space. You're trying to solve for who's your target group, and what's very specifically that intervention looking like that you're offering?
School enrollments in India is increasing, but young people transition to their career, that is still unstable. They are moving to low paid, low quality work, and that is something we are observing. Uh, there is studies which mention that 93% of the students are aware with just 3% of career options. If you go for the females, 50% of the females were not in employment or education or training. In higher education specifically, 50% of students who are enrolled are in undergraduate course. They are basically in those courses which are less employable disciplines. And the states where we are working is basically Hindi belt of India. And in this belt, out of this population of, say, youth, every fourth student are from either UP, Bihar, Haryana, or Uttarakhand, which is almost 40 million. And from 40 million, they enrolled in education. And when they join the workforce, this is just 11 million. So almost 25%, the entry is of, say, 40 million, and the exit is just 1/4 of that. So this funnel is something which is very, very challenging. And therefore, what we have decoded that all level of education is increased, but it is not translated into rewarding career outcome for a youth, and that is the problem as Medha we are trying to solve.
So what does your intervention look like, very briefly in a few seconds?
So basically our focus in to equip youth for career preparedness within public schools, vocational institutions, technical institutions, and higher education institutions. And the core focus is on, say, three mutually reinforced elements. The first one is, our observation is that even trade knowledge is critical, or the subject specific knowledge is critical, but this foundational 21st century skills, which is transferable during the career, that played a critical role for success in the career. And therefore, this 21st century skills and delivering these skills with career readiness in classrooms is very critical. So in model, we directly work with the student, and we also system actors to deliver these 21st century skills in classroom. That is one of the elements. We work with the students for certain kind of work opportunity, which include during the experience, during the course, the experience of on-the-job training or internship or apprenticeship or industrial training, and after completion of the course, certain kind of say full-time employment or certain kind of apprenticeship opportunities. And we also try to support departments in creating alumni networks, functional alumni networks, so that they can support during critical uh, years of engagement. And we feel that the first year of any student from college to work is very critical. So in that first year, they support each other both emotionally as well as per requirement.
Okay.
And this ERP model.
All right. So 21st century skill, practical exposure, and then a support alumni network. Wonderful. Thank you. Arunish, over to you. Generation, very briefly, and then, we'll get back to the details. You're in a slightly different space, a little older, maybe, people who are already in work. Just tell us, who are you trying to reach and what's the model?
Sure. First of all, thank you so much, and it's an honor to be part of this forum. So Generation is a global not-for-profit, and we work in education to employment ecosystems. The objective is to create economic mobility for youth. And the problem that we are trying to solve is that of the rising unemployment crisis, as defined by the World Bank, that one of the leading causes of poverty is unemployment. And about 200 million people globally are falling behind on this, and a vast majority of these people who are unemployed or underemployed fall in the global south, unfortunately. And with the market volatility sort of coming down, the impact of AI on jobs, there's 20% jobs in India that are being affected by AI, especially in sales, in tech, and in sort of AI exposed sectors like customer service. So this really impacts the economic mobility of youth in the country, given the fact that entry level jobs is the primary reason, a primary method for middle class families to come out of, to be able to earn a source of income for themselves. And if that funnel is reducing, then we have a huge problem. So basically, how Generation goes about solving this problem is we have a globally recognized and tested 7-step methodology, which looks at short-term skilling in a very holistic and a market-driven manner. We start with the job. We make sure that we have the right curricula, and we provide all kinds of training and training support, behaviors and mindsets. We also ensure that our learners get jobs. See, training is one of the 7 things that we do. And the metric that we sort of measure ourselves against is actually employment and retention, and the wage progression that our learners are able to actually see. So we are basically trying to get this methodology into government and public debate systems. So basically, we work with the central government and we work with state governments. We embed our methodology into existing ecosystems of the governments that have been created through training partners and schemes like the Pradhan Mantri Kaushal Vikas Yojana or DDU-GKY or even the state skilling missions, and enhance the outcomes for employment and retention. So we're not duplicating any infrastructure. We're taking the existing infrastructure, embedding our methodology, and enhancing the outcomes. That's what we're trying to do.
Thank you, thank you, thank you. So I think we're all on the same page. So, I think that's a good foundation to move into sort of your lessons, about your core lessons about scaling. So I'll invite each of you, to have a few minutes of a conversation on sort of your journey of growing that model, right, that you've just described, and partnering with state government, and then sort of your key takeaways on some of those main enablers and milestones in the process and the pain points. And Shim, again, we'll start with you. And I know there's so much to say, but let's again try to stay brief. Maybe just briefly mention some of those so that we can do that within a few minutes, and then really have time to dig deeper and have the conversation with the audience as well on your experiences. think you're muted. Where we see the screen.
Yeah, I'm just saying that, would you like to know a little bit about the journey that Udyam has taken, or?
Very briefly, because I think it shows it,
Yeah.
right? Don't go into every bullet, and we will share, right? So participants also don't get scared. If you can't take notes as quickly, we can share some of that afterwards, but, you know, we want to get into the conversation, but maybe it's helpful to see the journey,
Yeah,
you know,
maybe
in
in
30
two
seconds.
lines
And
I
then,
will, yeah, in 2 lines I will just summarize that in a few lines. Yeah, I think essentially Udyam was founded in 2017 by Mekin to solve the problem which he saw with, I mean, he was from Flipkart, which is one of the e-commerce giants. And the idea was how the entrepreneurial spirit that he experienced, how do you make it happen at scale? And that's where 2017 to 21, Udyam did a whole host of experiments where we worked with private schools, ITIs, and different channels to see how do you make entrepreneurship education work, and also tried various B2C based tech solutions to reach audiences. And all of this culminated in an opportunity with the Delhi government in 2019, where the Delhi government invited us to integrate our program in the Delhi in Delhi, where we had to do it across grades 9 to 12. So that was the first big break where we got an opportunity to do work with government schools. And once we realized that schools is working with the government was the path to scale and impact at scale, we decided to double down on scale. That's what we did. We consolidated, we moved out of ITIs, we moved out of our B2C, and then channeled all our energies and resources on schools. That was what we did in the next phase. And the third phase, we also started building more structure to ensure that we are able to track our progress. The next phase was what we call as impact at scale, where we started using a lot of data, because when you're working at scale, you want to have visibility to what's happening on the ground. So how do you we used a lot of extensive use of dashboards, one to get data from the ground and see how your program is actually functioning. Used a lot of tech, because although we work with master teachers and there is a cascaded teacher training which happens, there is additional support which is required through tech and AI. So AI and tech-based bots were provided for students and teachers to continue the engagement beyond the one-time training or the which happens with the government. And we also leveraged a lot of research to actually constantly look at what is the impact on the ground. So as we scaled, we wanted to see what's really working, what's not working. And that's where a collaboration with McGill University came in. And it clearly gave us a lot of indicators around both the kind of curriculum we have, the teacher training practices, the role of the community in creating this shift in a school system, because what we are trying to drive is a movement via the education system, because it's not a core traditional subject. And now we've reached the last phase, I would say, where we are currently touching around 2 million students each year, and across 10 states. And the last phase which we have ahead of us is how do you take this across the nation? So this is what we are on. Now I will invite my colleague Harish. Maybe you, Harish, because I've been speaking for a bit, would you like to take a little bit about this?
Sure. Thanks, Sham. So I think what our experience with government has been is how do we build that belief in stakeholders that what is it that we are trying to do together. So identifying those local issues that the state is facing, and then working with the government officials on solving for that is something that that we started with. For example, while working with Uttarakhand, how it's not that we are trying to solve for the migration issue that the state of Uttarakhand is facing, but how this kind of a program can solve for some of those local issues, so that students who are today studying in schools can identify local opportunities and try to create something, some business opportunities, some career opportunities out of that, has been one of the key strengths that we have been working with governments with. And then investing in master trainers. So Cascade is the model. So all our programs are being implemented by teachers who are part of this existing school system. So that's something that we need to, so teachers not only feel that they are trained, but at the same time how on ongoing on a regular basis they keep getting the support from dashboards, tech, and our field team is something this has been continuously going on. And as we understand that with such large scale programs, what's the validation, what's the immediate validation that you are getting as an outcome of the program? So when these students, they showcase their ideas, their business prototypes and problem solving approaches in their school melas, school fair, I think that's where community also participates. So how do we involve school stakeholders and community? They come together to see and validate these efforts that the program is building in the community, and how those students are going through this journey. Yeah, I'll take a pause if there is any clarification or question.
Yeah. Else, maybe we can just talk quickly about the challenges also. A couple of challenges which I think most of you would be familiar with. One is bureaucratic changes and transfers and political changes. And we've faced all of these, and this is part of our life, and we've built that we need nerves of steel to constantly stomach the changes, because just when you think your program is settling and there is high level of adoption, there is either a government change or a bureaucrat transfer. And these are things that we have to deal with sometimes. But I think the second thing is something that we are really looking forward to, which is how do we mainstream this subject as a very core subject? How do you unlock budgets for entrepreneurship education so that it starts becoming a high priority within the school system and not as an add-on? I think these are challenges. We have seen success in Punjab, Haryana recently, we've seen in Uttarakhand, and it's getting, I think they're getting better at it, but these are challenges which we need to call out as real, and that's what we want to call out. Yeah.
Well, thank you. And I think that last one is really essential. Like the same, you talked about your journey where you start to let go of things as you work to
Yes.
focus on one thing. I think obviously for the education system as a whole, that's the same issue. You can't just add on new things, and that conversation of letting go, obviously outside your scope of work, etc. But really essential to make space for these new ways of teaching, etc. Thank you. Saurabh, over to you. Also quickly, sort of that experience of growing your work and the key enablers and challenges that you faced. And I think my colleague will put up the presentation for you.
So can we share the slide?
Yeah, there we are coming.
Yeah.
So I think we're going to move on to just
Can
walk us through quickly, and then we'll go deeper.
Yeah, sure. So MEDA started in 2011, and currently, basically, we work with 8 government departments with almost 6,000 system actors, and we reached to almost 400,000 students. We started in 2011 to 14 from UP, and our co-founder Byomkesh and Chris. So Byomkesh is basically from UP, and we started from UP with that understanding that the kind of work and the gap of skilling where we were working, that was much required in that Hindi belt of that state. And for initial, say, 7 years, from 11 to 17, this whole work was basically in UP. It started from Lucknow and then moved to Gorakhpur. And in initial 7 years, we reached to almost 7,000 students. By that time, states like Haryana and Bihar, who are just existing states to these UP and UP, they basically invited us to work with their departments, and we moved to Haryana and Bihar. And in UP, at that point of time, a department approached us to start this whole 21st century skills, employability skills, and experiential learning program across all polytechnics in the state. And that was the first time when MEDA started something on scale. So the initial model was we directly work with the student through 3 kind of offering, which is career advancement bootcamp, life skills advancement bootcamp, and technology advancement bootcamp. So for initial 7 to 8 years, this was the main model where a student relationship, a student relationship manager in organization, they directly work with the student. But after that, when this went to scale in department, the model was to work with system actors, and these system actors basically learn these components of employability skills, 21st century skills. They incorporate that in their trades and subjects, and they translate that into the classroom. Uh, from 19 to 21, this whole uh, UPSTPC, which is a project in Polytechnic, that has a different kind of learning for the organization, to be very frank. And that was the first time when we worked with a scale, and we as an organization has an experience of when we interact with the state government, what kind of, and that experience is very different than when we interact with a student. So we have experienced that for that 2 years. And after that, due to COVID, lot of focus was basically on ensuring that students who are not coming to these colleges or campuses continue with their learnings, continue with their career preparation opportunities. So COVID also helped us to ensure and learn that how these offerings can be converted in a virtual mode, because that is a big shift for us. Uh, Post COVID, the model is working on both way, where we basically pilot new initiatives directly with the student, and we scale the learnings we had in last 1 decade. And we basically say we are working with these 8 departments across 4 states, and we are expanding this whole adoption in UP, Haryana, Uttarakhand, and Bihar, and Delhi is now added. So this is the 5th state where we are working in say last 3 years. So that is the way Meda expanded. Can we move to the next slide, please? As model, our focus is to enrich the learning experience of a student in a classroom, to ensure that they have enhanced career preparation and improved career path. And for that, we work inside the system. We establish our PMU within department, and the team of MEDA sits within department. We basically also, so this team helps this system to have a better governance and accountability mechanism. Basically, monthly meetings with agenda from the top to bottom approach, followed by certain kind of say use of tech and dashboards for data-backed decision-making process, and field notes and studies, and certain kind of patterns on what is working, and building this whole evidence for few policy change initiatives. And these all enablers basically work only on 3 key levers. One of that is capacity building. We do individual and institutional capacity building around curriculum, and certain kind of skills, which is focused on 21st century skills, employability skills, and experiential learning. We work with these institutions for industry connect, starting from basic localized industry mapping to industry talks to exposure visits to placement drives, and we support them for building these alumni communities, so that these alumni come and engage with these students for a very, very basic interaction on this. Career is a very long-term thing. So when you join your first placement, that is just a starting of career. That is not the final life. And these kind of interactions helps a lot for a student. Can we move to the next slide?
Yeah. Just briefly to, so we don't run out of time.
Sure.
Don't go through each of them, maybe the key ones, just, the ones that really stand out. You wanted,
So
the
I
slides
think
will
this
share.
whole, this whole working from inside department helps a lot. We co-create our plan with the plan of department, and this plan is part of their annual work plan and budget. So So we ensure that every program which is in a department, it become part of department's plan within first 2 years of engagement. That's played a very critical role, because then the ownership shift to the states, that it's their plan to implement that, and then our engagement with middle management to develop that plan. So this engagement of middle management and sitting inside the department is critical, uh, and we believe this can possible only in the long term. Uh, while we also feel that there is a overburden. Basically, specifically, if you talk about employability and this whole career readiness stuff, no one in the state government is responsible for that. There are departments where no one is directly for them. This is additional work, so that is one of the critical pain points for us. And we are advocating for a person like, say, SRM in Medha's model in every department, so that they talk about career, they talk about employability. We feel that is critical. This transfer of senior officials shared by Shyam, I'm not focusing on that, but more about states are okay for tracking of outputs, like offer raised or not. Anyone is in the career after a year of joining, that is not part of their track. How they are, uh, what is about their long term agency? What is about the confidence, that is not there? They're not tracking these outcomes. So we feel that this whole discussion is on outputs and not on the outcomes. That is the second critical pain point. And then talent for working in these states. We as an organization feel that talents we want to attract for UP, Bihar, Haryana, base their work with departments. We feel that it is very difficult to attract that kind of talent. And the expectation of donors has also changed, specifically after CSR. They expect very quick change, and our experience is that change in systems takes time. So that is something.
That makes sense. Yeah. Right. Yeah, no, I think you both alluded to this being a lengthy process and the bureaucracy changing, obviously being slow. So that takes time. And so if you have incentives financially that are too short term, that conflicts. Arunish, over to you. What's been, very quickly, that journey to scale where you are right now? I think you're very interesting period of time. Recently collaborated as part of the World Bank initiative. Just walk us through that and, what you found to be sort of the key enablers in that process. What were the milestones that made the real difference, right? And where, the stuff you're losing sleep over.
Sure. Basically, like I'd mentioned, we work with governments and we try and embed our methodology with the governments that enhance outcomes for placements and detention and the quality of training. When we started this journey, we of course started with this large public-private partnership called Ambar, which was part funded by the World Bank, and we worked very closely with Kanupriya on the same. And basically, the idea was to implement a project design, which is a public-private partnership. What that entails is that we continue to attract the monies that the government gives to training partners through common cost norms, but then we introduce additional payouts to training partners for placements and retention. So it's almost a pay for success kind of a model, where you are actually compensating the training partner additionally for outcomes. And these outcomes are placements and retention. And this was a very successfully implemented program. It was highly recognized by the government. It was also recognized, of course, by the World Bank. The World Bank very kindly speaks a lot about our project. And it's also on your website. So thank you so much about that. This was also measured externally by a third party called Mathematica. And that was a major enabler for us in the sense that, because there's a third party that assessed us. And when the assessment was done, both short term and long term, it was found that our placement percentages were 66%. And that of the comparison group was 21%. and the 21% was largely coming from the PMKVY cohorts. And then our wage outcomes were 14 to 20, 38% higher. Our retention was 90%, and 85% of our learners were doing jobs in which what they were trained for. So there's relevance to basically the kind of work that they're doing. So with that came the pathway for us to be able to take the same methodology to states. And we are now currently working with 6 states. We work with Maharashtra, Tamil Nadu, Jharkhand, Rajasthan, Uttar Pradesh, and Meghalaya. And that is because it was a demonstrated model, and it was third party assessed. And the design principles basically remain the same. It is a public private partnership. We bring in the additional monies from the CSR philanthropy. We are pro bono to the government. So as a non-profit, what are we offering to the government? We're basically saying, look, we have a methodology that works, and we will bring it to you pro bono, free of cost. We will enhance the outcomes for placements and retention. We will train the existing ecosystem, and we will enhance, and we will bring placements to as high as 70 to 80%. And, we will start the whole measurement of, we'll create a whole framework for outcome and impact measurement. So I think that is what has basically been the main reason that we've been able to expand ourselves. With these 6 states, we are already sitting at a commitment of about 200,000 learners for the next 2 years. So started the journey from 30,000 and now we're 200,000, and we're trying to get to at least 10 states in the current financial year. What keeps us up at night? A lot of things. One of which is the market resilience is coming in pieces, in the sense that we know that the service sector is very resilient, the green job sector is very resilient, but the tech sector is not. And you're increasingly losing jobs. There's the AI impact and all of that. So we have to be constantly at our feet to be able to ensure that AI is being instituted in the way we deliver our programs. So we started doing that. We are ensuring that at least a foundation course on AI is being taught to our learners, so that they are able to then at least have basic AI skills. So I think the fast changing employment market is something that definitely keeps us up at night. And some of the other things that plague the industry, which everyone has spoken of. Shyam has spoken about it. Saurabh spoken about it.
Right.
Consistent change in the bureaucracy. Those kinds of things have been. We've seen 3 secretaries change in the last 6 months at the central government level. So that those are the kind of challenges that we continue to face.
So let me ask one to follow-up question to this, but in the meantime, because I want to bring in some people maybe asking their own questions about that scaling experience. So I know there's also questions specific to each organization's model, etc., and I encourage the speakers to maybe answer that on the side. But I invite people to also come in really on the scaling experience with their own question. But let me ask you this, and maybe Arun, start with you, and Shyam, so feel free to jump in. So my first question is, you've evolved from a doer, right, testing your model, implementing your model yourself, to sort of more of an architect in the system, right, where you provide services to government, to states, etc. So that's an organizational shift, a shift in capabilities as well. And I was just curious if you had some thoughts, about that shift and what that's meant for you as an organization, or what you would recommend to other NGOs trying to scale, because I think sometimes NGOs can get stuck in the I'm the delivery person and I implement. And then they don't move on to actually supporting the replication of that model, right? So that's a question I have. And then the second one, and it's pulling us back to the conversation we had 2 weeks ago with including Mulago Foundation, Kevin Starr, and I know they've been a supporter, I think, of Meta, and I don't know if the others. He said that for something to have a chance to be taken up by government at the end of the day, there's a few things that need to be in place. It needs to be big enough to solve the problem. It needs to be cheap enough. It needs to be simple enough. It also needs to be effective enough. But I want to, ask about that cheap enough and simple enough. In your experience, what have you been able to do to ensure that it is simple enough, especially because you also alluded to all about its additional work. It's maybe not part of their core. It's doing something differently. So I think the feature of it being simple strikes me as quite important. So maybe reflecting on that as well. So those two, I don't know if we'll start with you, the others jump in. And in the meantime, audience, please, share some of your questions in the chat and then we can call on you.
Sure, no, thank you for that observation. Yes, that's true that we have now in a way become the enabler. And I think the way we define ourselves is that we are an organization that is a neutral platform. We're bringing everyone together. So we bring together the government, the donor, the employer, and of course, central to our work is the learner. And we offer a simple model. We have a time-tested, globally tested 7-step methodology. We bring in our own systems, we bring in our own tools, and we bring in our own people, and we bring in our own funding. So, in that sense, yes, we are additional work, but then we do it at our own cost, and we help the government. Basically, see, governments like demonstrated models. You can't give them a proposal and expect that this will start flying on its own. You will have to go down to the ground and implement it with them, and then measure it with them, showcase it to them that it actually works. That's what Amber did to us, with the help of the World Bank. And I think that is what opened all the doors, and that is essentially what led us to becoming an enabler. But every time we start a relationship with the government, I must admit, it is an absolutely fresh relationship, because central government works differently from state governments. Each state government works differently. Rajasthan doesn't have the same job roles as Maharashtra does. So, you have to customize. And to answer your question on simplicity, I think the one important thing is to not duplicate what the government already has created. The government is the largest investor in the skills space in the country. That infrastructure exists. It's just not performing. So if you're able to help this system perform, think of the utilization that you are able to create for the government. If 100 people are enrolled and only 20 people get jobs and 60% of them get enrolled, you are left with what, 12 people in the ecosystem by the end of the whole system. So what are we doing? We are actually increasing that by 6x, and bringing in our tools, bringing in our people, and adapting to their systems. We don't go to the government and say that I'll create a new system for you. We basically, if we work with the National Skills Development Corporation, we still work with the SIDH portal, with the Skill India portal. We don't create a separate portal for them. So I think that's what has helped us is to adapt their systems and make them better, rather than go up to them and I'll create a whole new thing for you. That I don't think works. I hope that answers the question.
Thank you. Shiram Masar, very quickly, do you want to jump in as well?
Yeah, just like to add that, like, how do you evolve, right, when you're working with the government? I think one of the things that we've seen is the scale design has to be baked in even in our pilot and right from the outset. So, for example, when we worked with the government of Uttarakhand in year one itself of our program running at a certain scale, and we worked directly with the teachers and ran it. We recognize that only in 45% of the schools where the curriculum was being run the way we would like it to, we saw a shift. Whereas in the balanced schools, it was not happening, right? And we got to be okay with it. But we had research from McGill University. We had partners from McGill University, which told us. So we were constantly tracking and showing this data, which anchored on the fact that where curriculum-led projects were happening, there is a significant mindset shift which is happening amongst the students, and that was measured by data. That led to significant anchoring by the government around better support for execution, more, and as a result, now we've moved to around 60% of execution quality. So I think one of the things is baking it right up front. The second thing, what I wanted to talk about, simplicity, which you brought up, I think one of the things that we find is when we like, because it's an add-on program and you're adding more complexity, one of the things that we try and do is I think make it an experience not just for the students who are running it, but make it an experience for the teachers also. Unless they experience our curriculum, we had to reframe our entire design of our trainings to make the teachers go through an experience rather than go through lesson plans which they have to teach. Otherwise, it becomes another tick box that they need to do. So what we've seen is ever since teachers started buying into an experience and experiencing what we're trying to do, their ownership levels have shifted significantly. And its simplicity at a conceptual level. And I think then how they do it, there is some variation, but the ownership levels are much higher because the belief is high because they've experienced it rather than they've been told that this is how you do it. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah.
So I feel that the situation of working within the government system is very different than the situation of working in a system where government is not there. And therefore, if something need to be created to work with the government, that need to be piloted within government system. That is one thing. That is the experience, and that need to be co-created. Because if we are coming with certain kind of already cooked dish, from the day one, the ownership is not there. And from the day one, therefore, the sustainability may have certain kind of questions. And once you crack this whole process of, co-creation with the state, and that comes with continuous, rigorous engagement with the state. So this continuous dialogue, pushing them, the preparation can be within organization, but with that preparation, there is a kind of say persistence and follow-up is required with the state, and the patience that okay, right time will come to implement that thing. So this preparation, persistent and patience, I feel that is very critical when we work with any state, and uh, that is something is our learning. Yeah.
For sure. And on this, because now we're talking, and you all brought it up, what's the government want? And I think that's a perfect segue. Panupriya, I want to bring you in on this because that's who you work with. You work with the government side. You negotiate World Bank funding to large-scale government initiatives. And, and so I want to ask you, in terms of, what you've seen as we talked about the Ember project, many others in education and skilling. What is it that influences government's willingness to sort of invest in ultimately it's just doing something differently, right? It's something new. We talked earlier, I think, Arunish, I think you brought it up, right? We had it demonstrated. So in a way it was de-risked already because you had tested it, you had some. So, but kind of from your perspective, sitting on the other side of the table, what is it that government asks for? What do they want from you when you say, why don't, we could try this or that? Share with us.
Yeah, thank you. That's a great question, and it's actually one of my favorite things to talk about. And I'll start with an anecdote of mine, which was really a big turning point in my career. So years ago, before I started working at the World Bank, I was working for a small nonprofit, and we were a UK based organization, and we were running these cute 30 charter schools in a city, London, and they were. The UK regularly assesses its charter schools, and these were some of the top performing charter schools. And we opened our offices in India, and we were like, yes, we want to sort of have these schools be operational in India. So we had a program running with the government of Madhya Pradesh, and we were fortunate enough to get an appointment with the principal secretary. And we went in to make a presentation that, sir, look at this. We have this amazing model. We invest heavily on teacher professional development. The classroom teachers knows every child, and this is a model, 30 schools, top of the rank on the O levels and L levels, or whatever level the child is writing. They are performing. And the principal secretary just kept very patiently listening to us, and he was like, good, but how many schools do you actually run? And we were like, oh, sir, we run 30 schools. And he just leaned back in his chair and he was like, that's cute, but I run 120,000 schools in this state. So do you think the model that is working for 30 schools is going to be applicable in my state where, the children don't speak the same language, the teachers don't speak the same language as uh, as the student? So to answer your question, I think the government always wants something that is context specific, something that is affordable, something that is very easy to roll out, and something that is actually solving the problem that's at hand, right? So that's why what we were able to do with Amber. And so we as the World Bank obviously come in to finance government operations or government programs or private sector programs, but also now increasingly our role is to help government leverage private sector money as well, right? So the idea is to bring the government and the private sector together, because eventually what is going to happen is that the jobs are going to be in the private sector. So the two need to talk to each other. So why we were successful with Amber was really this point that traditionally we were doing trainings that were very supply driven. We had identified certain sectors, we had said, yes, we want to do logistics, we want to do construction, let's set some targets and let's train. But with Amber, we came in and we said that, wait a minute, supply driven trainings are working, but what about we do demand driven? So we have these job roles that industry players are already asking for us, and we would identify those job roles, we would train specifically for those job roles. That's why you've got the success that you've got under Amber of high placement rates, which we don't typically see in other government programs, specifically the PMKVY program that Arunish ji mentioned, right? So the idea is the government wants something that is affordable, context specific, and really trying to solve the problem that is at hand. So I know I should have shared this slide with you, but I didn't. But I do want to share this slide that I'm stealing shamelessly from my colleague Shunta, who I see is online, because in South Asia we've written a paper and it's in the public domain and we can share it, which
We'll
talks
share it
about certain.
afterwards.
Yeah, and I think everyone should read it, and anyone who wants to work with the government should read that paper. It's a very easy read, but basically we've developed it for foundational learning because we've looked at some of the foundational learning projects, and these principles 100% applied to Amber because that was the project that I know. But as I heard Saurabh and Shyam talk about, I feel like these principles apply to all the programs that we talked about. Let me just give me a minute to just share my screen, and just give me a heads up when you can see it. um can you see what I'm trying to share?
I see it. If you put it on presentation mode, we'll see it bigger. Perfect.
Can you see the
Yep.
six? You can see the 6 principles for scaling
Yes.
up. So basically, what we are talking about is that I mean, we've developed this for foundational learning, but I feel like they apply to skilling programs and youth employment programs as well. And these are 6 principles that beautifully sum up the acronym success. And I think each of these organizations have talked about that, you need to start with a strategic vision. You need to have a problem at hand that you're trying to solve and then work towards it. And because we as the World Bank primarily work with the government, we are always trying to problem solve and co-create, like Saurabh mentioned, right? So that's why we are able to bring in a generation to say, okay, this is the problem that we're trying to problem solve, and you have like a strategic shared vision, and then you have to take that to the next step, which is to plan for that vision, right? So if you're trying to bring in something, say, that worked in a Maharashtra, which is a very different context, even within Maharashtra, Mumbai would have a very different context, say from a Yavatmal, right? These are just 2 districts within the same state, but they will have very different contexts, and if you've planned for those contexts, then you're able to take your program from like a smaller number to a larger number, and then you move towards making sure that you have your core elements in place, and those core elements respond to to the context. You can tweak one or two elements as you make it more context relevant, but you need to have the core design in place. And of course, you have to collaborate. You can't do it without partners, right? Like I said, ultimately, the government's responsibility may be to train all the young people who are entering the labor force, but ultimately the jobs are going to be in the private sector. So you have to make sure that you have the private sector involved in this process. You have to make sure your other development partners, not just the multilateral donor banks, but other development partners are involved, other nonprofits, private sector and industry experts are involved. And then once you've piloted it, make sure you have the evidence. So, we are able to talk with so much confidence about Amber because we've seen the evidence that has come through the Mathematica study, right? So when you have evidence, when you are backed by data, then you can really say that this thing works, because you can make numbers lie, but they don't lie when things are working, right? And then ultimately you have to talk about sustainability. Though we put sustainability at the end in our 6 principles, but I think sustainability really has to be the first point. So that's why you start with an S and you close with an S. Because if you have to have something that's scalable, you have to make sure that it's sustainable. We as the World Bank always tell the governments that it's your program. We are coming in to help you implement this program, right? So don't think that it will work only while you have the World Bank money, because it is a money that is a fiscal debt on the country. India is an IBRD country. They borrow money. There is an interest rate that you're paying on this, right? It's taxpayers' money. So don't design a program that would just fall and collapse the moment the bank exits. So you have to keep sustainability at the core of those whole things. So I think for us, sustainability and scale really is at the core of everything, because ultimately you have a program is only as good as how sustainable it is, right? If we're only working because I was there and I was controlling as the organization, and we were implementing it is when it was working, that's not success. Success is that you've helped the government build that system, you walk away and it still continues, because that's what sustainability is, that's what ownership is, and that's what success looks like. I'll stop there.
Right. Thank you, Kanupriya. And I do realize we're running out of time, but I think there's a few good, interesting follow-up questions that I want to bring up. So for those who can stay on a few more minutes, that's wonderful. Kanupriya, I have one very specific follow-up question, because I think we sometimes say, oh, NGO government partnerships, and it sounded great from all the experience we've heard. When I've been working in different countries, and government is used to doing things its way through its own institutions, and you bring up the idea of, oh, there's some other NGOs having an interesting model. It's not always that smooth. It's not like, oh yeah, where's the social innovator? I want to learn from them and see how we can integrate it. There's suspicion, there is distrust. Take us a little bit behind the scenes, because as you said, World Bank works directly with government. We're not funding NGOs directly, but as you try, and you were saying, is trying to nurture, working with government to introduce mechanisms of financing that allow to bring in, NGOs, like we heard in the case of Generation. Take us, what's happening behind the curtains? What are some of the difficult conversations you're having? The negotiations and what you're hearing about, we don't know about this, because I think this could, help us, then from the other side, really bridge that gap, which often seems to be there.
Yeah. No, that's again a great question, and I want to take the example of the other project that we funded that has just closed. So, Amber was funded under a project which was a loan support to the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship, which was looking at doing a lot of short-term skills training through private training partners. But we also had a loan support program with the Ministry of Education in India, and that program just closed. And this was exactly the model that we had. So while we had various components of the program, we had one particular component which was giving the states, it was a federally sponsored scheme, but in 6 specific states. And one of the components really was to enable the states and give them power to engage with non-state actors on context-specific things or issues or thematic areas that they would like to work on. So the project focused on 5 thematic areas, one of which was school to work transition, which is essentially giving pathways and career guidance to senior secondary students. And what we were able to do through the program was really give states the flexibility to say, hey, you know your context, you know who are the children who are dropping out at the secondary level, are not entering education or not entering grade 1, they're wanting in to go to an ITI. So your context in a Maharashtra is very different from Rajasthan, where Maharashtra is a labor importing sort of a state and Rajasthan is a labor exporting. So your contexts are very different. The kind of trainings you want to do, so the kind of partners you want to do is going to be very different. And what we saw was that when we gave the states this flexibility to really carve out, identify who are the players that are working with you, it's something that really worked. But this wasn't easy, because when we were trying to prepare this project, we got a lot of pushback from the same civil society organizations to say, hey, the government is outsourcing its responsibility. But the idea is that it was not an outsourcing of responsibility to private players, but also going back to the idea of collaboration, because the problem of making sure that young people can read and write and can enter a labor market with the skill sets that enables them to thrive is not a single body's job. You have to make sure that the governments work with the private sectors, work with the profits, sometimes work with the non-profits, and sometimes the non-profits, and we as donor banks can only come in for a little while. Ultimately, it has to be the government and the private sector that has to work. So it's, these conversations are not easy, but you do, and yes, inherently in India, trust is a big issue. But I have also seen a shift in the last, say, 10 years, where private sector has also come in and said, yes, we recognize that trust has been an issue, but we will demonstrate that we can do this before you invest in us. So I think the nonprofit sector is also taking that leap of faith and saying, we have faith in our product, if I can call it that, and we will demonstrate that this works before you bank on us. So, so now you see the skills ministry has also done a development impact bond on skills training, right, with the British Asia Trust, where you are able to bring in investors to say, yes, this is something that is going to work. But yeah, these are not easy questions, these are not easy conversations. And but if you've designed something and you've tested it out and you have the evidence to back it, it's ready to be scaled up.
Thank you. No, I think that's very important. I'm gonna try one more time. I didn't see a lot of question in the chat earlier, but does someone want to come in on this nexus, government NGO partnership, and redefining these relationships, asking a question to our panelists?
Kevin, we have,
yeah.
sorry, Kevin, this is Vanessa. We have about 3 questions coming in from the chat. I don't know if you want to bring that in. It's not very specific to the topic that you just mentioned, but overall to the conversation.
Well, like I said, I think we'll try to maybe these, I saw some of them were very specific to one in their model. So I think that in part has been also responded to individually. Let's just see. So we don't go away from the sort of flow. Is there something on here? So let me, do we have something here on these kind of, or I mean, also, Shyam, Arunasha, do you have, a question, that engagement with World Bank where, a question back to Kanupriya on like, her thoughts on, how that, those kind of relationships, can be nurtured and what it takes to, bring that more, help you, like you're saying, that through that patient process of, fighting the bureaucracy and changing systems, because that's what it is ultimately, where maybe the room of control ends for NGOs working within the government systems, but that's where obviously sometimes some of the World Bank conversations with government have different leverage to how do we change that we allow for collaborations. That means government procurement sometimes, right? It's often the boring stuff that kind of, I mean, you know, any questions from your end also, you know, into the room, feel free.
I'm good.
Okay, all right. So maybe since we're, you know, already a little over time, maybe a sort of a last question then to all of you, sort of some final thoughts. If you, as we look back, reflecting on your journey, which is, you know, certainly, you know, all the three organizations had an exciting journey, but you've also shared some of the pain points, and connecting that with, you know, the message you've sent that it is a collaboration, you know, and you've worked with researchers, you've worked with philanthropy to fund, because if you're providing services pro bono, that means someone's got to be funding that pro bono time, etc. So there's a role of different actors clearly in this. You as an organization supporting the replication, but someone needs to fund that. The World Bank, maybe on the side working with the government. Maybe as part of your final thoughts, for the three of you, what's next? And what do you think really maybe is that additional lever of collaboration or partnership or support that you think will be needed to take you to the next level, to help you expand to other states? And you know, do you see from the NGO side, you envision, okay, where you see the World Bank play a role? And then maybe Kanubria, as your final thoughts, you know, where do you see, you know, what can we do better to help integrate some of these really interesting and strong models that are being piloted by social innovators, and get that into World Bank dialogue with government? So, you know, your final thoughts and reflections as we depart, and giving us all some food for thought.
Yeah, maybe perhaps I can go.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I think for us now in Udyam, we are present around 10 states, like I said, but we're working deep and at scale in a few states, 5 states, Uttarakhand, Punjab, Haryana, MP, and now also Maharashtra. And our goal over what's next is to really create exemplar models, which can be role models, which can, you know, really be replicated at a national level. Our data is very, very promising in terms of the research data, which is coming from the work that we are doing in some of our states, which are showing, you know, clear impact on the students we're working at. So I think what's next, which we are looking for, is how do we institutionalize or mainstream our work, because the government is also trying to drive the national education policy, NEP, and and we are looking, and they're also looking, and a key part of NEP is mainstreaming of vocational education into all schools. And we are in talks with governments, and there is a lot of conversation around how these mindsets, entrepreneurial mindsets, are integrated into the vocational, so that it actually makes its mindsets are integrated and mainstreamed through the vocational route. That way, it also gets the resources and the backing of the government. But I think what we need is definitely some amount of advocacy for this, and support for driving this and integration with the government. I think that's one very important thing, so that we are able to unlock dedicated allocation of budgets, is what I would say, for doing this work. It cannot be pulled out of, you know, different types of budgets to make this program happen, which is what happens because states do believe in it, and now this is changing. There is budget items. It is becoming a budget item, perhaps in Punjab, slowly in Haryana, somewhat in Uttarakhand. But to really get the backing of the government and say bet on the fact that this has to be every kid in India deserves to build an entrepreneurial mindset if they have to face the world that we are going to face today, and that being integrated into mainstream curricula is something that we really want to do. We believe we have the case studies of 5 states, but we don't want to go to every single state independently. We do believe that it's reached a point where if we can make it mainstream policy, then we can actually integrate it across the country and be maybe enable other collaborators and partners to take on the program and take it from there, because we've kind of built a model which is hopefully getting there in terms of replication.
Thank you. Thank you. Saurabh?
So I feel currently the focus is more on the supply side of the whole work. The demand side of this whole labor market, it is still not worked with that kind of engagement by even multiple players. And therefore, how to engage with the government and demand side together. I think that is something which is critical as the next step of this whole engagement. The other part is, while the every fourth youth is in this Hindi, which is UP, Uttarakhand, Bihar, Jharkhand, and the big portion of money is in Maharashtra, Gujarat, Telangana. So I don't know how how to match this mismatch of money, where money is and where youth is. It's not matching at all. The problem is somewhere else, the focus is somewhere else in this country, because money is somewhere else. I think this whole attract this industry to come to this part of country where youths are and engage there for that kind of on the job training experience. I think that is something which is the next, what next with this state, and that kind of discussion is required.
Okay, thank you. Arunesh?
Now, I'll just reinforce, not much left to speak, given everyone's spoken. But, I'll reinforce what Kanupriya said, that, that the focus has been on training, and that has to change to outcome-based skilling. And I think that is the North Star that we are chasing. And, unless or until that doesn't change, the ecosystem will not change. And that sort of a push will have to come at a policy level from the government. It cannot come without, top-down policy level. Of course, it has to be consultative and everything else, but it has to come as a policy from the government. And therefore, I think how, the bank can help us is really advocacy. Take proven models, like Amber or others, the Skill India Impact Bond, which have demonstrated that outcome-based skilling works and it's scalable. The fact that we moved from Amber to 6 other states clearly proves that this is scalable. So, I think that is the level of advocacy that needs to be done, and then it becomes the gold standard. That is just the way skilling is done in the country. I think that's the way I look at it.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Kanupriya?
Yes, just my closing thought is going to be that ultimately, see, it has to be collaboration, right? And we as the bank are for us, the North Star really is jobs. How can we help government of India create more jobs? That's our North Star in India, but also globally. And the jobs are going to be in private sector. So we as the World Bank are going to continue to play that role of course, advocating, but also making sure that we help build the regulatory environment that enables the private sector to come in. And when I say private sector, I mean both for profit and non-profit. So just in January, the World Bank board has approved $830 million loan support to the Ministry of Skill Development and Entrepreneurship. And it's an equal co-financing with Asian Development Bank, which is to strengthen the ITIs, which are the Industrial Training Institutes. And one of the key deliverables that we have for that project is private market mobilization. So sort of to your point, like why only in Maharashtra? We've got other priority states as well. We've got a few states that we'll be working in to help the government bring in the money and really make that regulatory environment for the private sector to come in and play. So we are also moving towards merging our public sector and private sector lending and making it one coherent place, so that we as World Bank IBRD come in and make that enabling environment so that the private sector can come in and really create those jobs. And I think ultimately it is about trust and collaboration. I mean, that's public policy, right? And our challenge is always going to be that turnover of officials, but it's about people. So you have to make sure that you continue to invest in people at various levels. So yeah, a collaboration and people is going to be at the center of what it all. Thanks.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you all. I think this was really enlightening. Obviously, it's always just part of a conversation. We don't manage to get into every details, but we will share, as I said, more resources about all of your work, also with registered participants, including those who maybe last minute couldn't join. And we'll take your also thoughts back internally. I think there was many interesting points we touched upon. One big message that really stood out to me is this building from within and building for the government, solving their problem and not just trying to have an externally cooked dish that may be cute, but is not ultimately what the government wants or needs and solves the problem at scale. And that, that we need to have that realism of, because ultimately all of these things are behavioral change, right? It's trying to introduce something new. It's change management to some extent. And that's what, I heard you all say, it's the bureaucracy that's hard to, what that then means, I think also for the collaboration that you all pointed out, is that we need the mechanisms to support those collaborations, because, if I want your NGO to be patient, and working with government and through the different changes in administration and remotivating middle management, it needs the structures behind it that allow you to do that work. And on this, at the same time, it also needs the structures behind World Bank. And I know we have some trust fund structures, et cetera, that allow us to be a little bit more flexible, doing that advocacy work that's maybe not part of a current project, right? Because then our hands can also be a little tied. But I think that's then the conversations we have. How does the philanthropy funding needs to be structured so that's patient capital? How does some of the work? How can we structure some support to World Bank teams who try to nurture that trust, now try to nurture these collaborations, try to introduce some advocacy on something new, and build support there. So I think we have many interesting pointers for moving forward. Thank you so much. I think I speak for all of us at the S4YE team. Thank you for making time. You're all very busy people. And I look forward to what's next and wish you all the best as you fight the daily battle in all the states where you work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks.